I woke up in the hospital 3 days after the accident to find my phone flooded with messages. None of them about me. Can't believe Sarah's getting married at the Rosewood Estate. Your sister is so lucky. That venue books up years in advance. Sorry about your accident, but thank God it didn't mess up the wedding plans. That last one was from my mother. I stared at the screen, my head still throbbing from the concussion. My left leg elevated in a cast that went from ankle to hip. The doctors had told me I was lucky to be alive. A drunk driver had T-boned my car at 60 miles per hour. I'd been unconscious for 2 days. I'd fractured my femur, cracked 3 ribs, and had internal bleeding that required emergency surgery. And my family's primary concern was whether I'd ruined my sister's wedding timeline. The thing is, I wasn't even surprised. This was exactly who they'd always been. I was just too broken, physically and emotionally, to keep pretending it didn't hurt. My phone buzzed again. Sarah. Finally. Mom says you're awake. Thank God. Listen, I know this is bad timing, but the wedding coordinator needs final head count by Friday. Are you going to be able to come or not? Because if you're going to be in a wheelchair or something, we need to adjust the seating chart and maybe the bridesmaid dress situation. Let me know ASAP. Not, are you okay? Not, I was so worried. Not even a, how are you feeling? Just logistics. Just wedding planning. Just Sarah, as always, at the center of the universe while I orbited like a forgotten moon. I set the phone face down on the hospital tray and closed my eyes, letting the pain medication pull me back under. But before I slipped into unconsciousness, a strange warmth spread through my chest. Not physical, but something else. Something that felt almost like a presence. And then I heard it. A voice that wasn't quite a voice, more like a thought that didn't belong to me. They have made their choice. Now you may make yours. When I opened my eyes again, everything had changed. Not the hospital room, that was the same sterile white, the same beeping machines, the same antiseptic smell. But something inside me was different. I felt aware, connected, like I'd been living my whole life with a blindfold on and someone had just ripped it away. I lifted my hand and watched as a faint golden shimmer rippled across my skin, visible for just a moment before fading. What the hell? I tried to sit up, gasping at the pain that shot through my ribs. A nurse rushed in immediately. Easy, Ms. Morgan. You shouldn't be moving like that. What? What happened to me? I asked, my voice hoarse. She gave me a sympathetic smile. You were in a very serious accident. You're lucky to be alive. The doctor will explain everything, but you're going to need extensive physical therapy. Your leg was badly broken and... No, I interrupted. I mean just now. Did you see... Did anything seem strange? She frowned, checking my vitals. Strange how? Are you experiencing hallucinations? That can be a side effect of the pain medication. I shook my head, immediately regretting it as the room spun. Never mind. But I knew what I'd seen. And more importantly, I knew what I'd felt. Something had awakened inside me during that accident. Something that had been dormant my entire life, waiting for the exact right moment, the exact right amount of pain and betrayal to emerge. Over the next few days, I started to understand it. Every time someone was cruel to me, every time someone dismissed my pain or treated me as an inconvenience, that golden warmth would pulse in my chest. And every time it pulsed, I would know things, secret things, true things. When my mother finally visited, 4 days after I woke up, squeezed in between dress fittings and cake tastings, I knew the moment she walked through the door that she'd already spent the money from my emergency fund. The fund I'd been building since I was 16, working 2 jobs through college while Sarah partied on mom and dad's dime. The fund that was supposed to help me start my business. She'd taken $12,000 to upgrade Sarah's honeymoon from Cancun to Bora Bora. Sweetheart, Mom said, perching on the edge of my bed without actually looking at my injuries. I'm so glad you're okay. You gave us such a scare. Sarah was beside herself. Lie. The warmth in my chest pulsed, and I knew with absolute certainty Sarah had laughed when she heard about my accident. Actually laughed. At least she won't upstage me in the photos, she told Mom. I'm sure, I said quietly. Now, about the wedding. The doctor says you'll be discharged in about a week, which gives you just under 2 months to recover. That should be plenty of time to get out of that cast and into a dress, right? Sarah's already ordered your bridesmaid dress, and it's non-refundable, so… Mom. I cut her off, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Did you take money from my savings account? She blinked, and for just a second I saw panic flash across her face. Then she laughed, that high, tinkling laugh she used when she was about to gaslight someone. Sweetheart, that wasn't your money. That was the family emergency fund that we all contributed to. And this wedding is a family emergency. Do you know how expensive these things are? Sarah deserves the honeymoon of her dreams, and you of all people should understand that. You're her sister. I earned every penny of that money, I said. You never put a dime in that account. Well, I raised you, didn't I? Fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years? I'd say I contributed plenty. She stood up, smoothing her designer skirt. Purchased, I now knew with sudden clarity, with the credit card that was technically in my name, but that she'd opened without my permission when I was 19. Honestly, Natalie, I expected more. Gratitude. Sarah is going through such a stressful time, and you're lying here making everything about yourself. She left before I could respond, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. And that's when I made my decision. They wanted me to disappear? To be a convenient prop in Sarah's perfect life story? Fine. I'd disappear, but not in the way they expected. My family's cruelty hadn't started with the accident. It had been building my entire life, a slow accumulation of tiny cuts that had bled me dry long before that drunk driver ever hit my car. I was the oldest by 3 years, but you'd never know it from the way they treated me. From the moment Sarah was born, she became the sun, and I became the shadow. The pretty one, the charming one, the one who deserved everything. I got the hand-me-downs. Sarah got shopping trips to Nordstrom. I got a beat-up Honda for my 16th birthday, purchased with money I'd earned myself. Sarah got a brand new BMW for hers. I worked full-time through college to pay my tuition. Sarah's was fully funded by our parents, including her sorority dues, spring break trips, and a monthly allowance that was more than I made in a year. When I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in software engineering, Dad missed my ceremony because he was at Sarah's college boyfriend's parents' summer house in the Hamptons, networking. When Sarah graduated, barely with a 2.3 GPA in communications, they threw her a party that cost more than my entire education. The pattern was clear. I existed to make Sarah's life easier. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who could be counted on to handle everything while they all celebrated my sister's mediocrity as if it were genius. And I'd let them do it. God help me, I'd let them do it for 27 years. But here's what they didn't know. That accident hadn't just awakened something magical in me. It had awakened something much more dangerous. Clarity. I finally saw them for exactly what they were. And I saw myself for who I'd been. A doormat with a degree. The power that had awakened inside me wasn't like the magic in fairy tales. It wasn't flashy or obvious. It was subtle, insidious, perfect. I could sense truth in lies. I could read emotions with perfect accuracy. And most importantly, I could influence probability. Just slightly, just enough. A word whispered at the right moment would be heard. A document left in the right place would be found. A suspicion planted would grow. I couldn't control people or read minds, but I could stack the deck. I could make sure that the natural consequences of their actions would find them, no matter how hard they tried to hide. And my family had been hiding a lot. Over the next week in the hospital, I started digging. I had my laptop and I had time, and I had this new sense that guided me to exactly the right places to look. My mother, I discovered, hadn't just taken money from my savings account. She'd been systematically stealing from me for years. That credit card she'd opened in my name? She'd maxed it out 3 times, paying the minimum and letting the interest accumulate. My credit score was in the gutter. She'd also taken out a personal loan in my name, forging my signature to the tune of $40,000. The money had gone to Sarah's college expenses, a new car for herself, and renovations on their house that I'd never been told about. I was legally liable for all of it. Nearly $60,000 in debt that I'd never agreed to, never benefited from, and couldn't afford to pay. My father was no better. He'd promised to match my college savings when I was in high school. We'd even signed a contract, a cute little father-daughter agreement. He'd never paid a cent. But worse than that, he'd actively sabotaged my career. When I'd applied for a job at his company, a major tech firm where I was more than qualified, he'd personally blocked my application. He'd told the hiring manager I was unstable and had substance abuse issues. I'd never even gotten an interview. I'd wondered why at the time, but I'd accepted his excuse that they weren't hiring right now. They'd hired 3 people in my position that month. And Sarah? Sweet, beautiful, beloved Sarah? She'd been having an affair with my ex-fiancé Marcus for the past 8 months. They'd slept together in my apartment, in my bed, while I was working overtime to save for our wedding. When I'd caught Marcus cheating with someone from work, he'd claimed Sarah had been the shoulder I'd cried on. She'd told me I was better off without him. She'd helped me pack his things. She'd been screwing him the entire time. The man she was marrying now, David, had no idea. He thought Sarah was a virgin, saving herself for marriage. It was part of her carefully crafted persona. The good girl, the traditional girl, the girl who did everything right. David came from old money, serious money, the kind that came with a trust fund and a last name that opened doors. He was sweet, naive, and completely convinced that Sarah was the perfect woman. My sister was a lot of things, but perfect wasn't one of them. I had proof of everything. The golden warmth in my chest had guided me to every email, every text message, every financial document. It was like having a supernatural GPS that only pointed toward evidence of wrongdoing. And as I lay in that hospital bed, scrolling through years of betrayal and theft and lies, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Power. They thought I was broken. They thought I was defeated. They had no idea what was coming. I was discharged from the hospital on a Tuesday. My mother picked me up because she happened to be in the area. She wasn't. She lived 45 minutes away, but she needed to maintain appearances. Can't have people thinking she was a bad mother. "You look terrible," she said as I maneuvered myself into her car on crutches. "You're going to need to do something about those dark circles before the wedding. Maybe get some of those eye masks. And that cast is absolutely hideous. Can't they put you in one of those walking boots instead?" "The cast stays on for 6 more weeks," I said. "Doctor's orders." She sighed dramatically. "Well, we'll just have to work around it. Maybe we can cover it with fabric that matches your dress. Make it look intentional, like a fashion statement." I didn't respond. I was too busy cataloging everything she said. Every micro-expression of annoyance. Every moment where her concern for Sarah's wedding trumped any concern for my well-being. She drove me to my apartment. A tiny 1-bedroom in a bad neighborhood. The only place I could afford after my family had financially decimated me. She didn't offer to help me up the stairs. She didn't ask if I needed groceries or help setting up a recovery space. "Sarah wants to come by tomorrow to discuss bridesmaid duties," she said as I struggled to get my crutches out of the back seat. "Be ready by 10. And please, try to be enthusiastic. She's under so much stress right now." Then she drove away, leaving me alone on the curb with a cast that made stairs a nightmare and a body that still ached from being shattered. I made it up to my apartment eventually, sweating and shaking from the effort. Once inside, I collapsed on my couch and let myself cry for the first time since the accident. Not from physical pain, from the sheer, crushing weight of realizing that my family had never loved me. Not really. I was a resource to them, nothing more. A bank account with legs, a person-shaped tool they could use and discard as needed. But I was done crying. Done being their victim. I dried my eyes, opened my laptop, and got to work. The first step was protecting myself. I contacted a lawyer, a friend from college who owed me a favor, and explained the financial situation. She was horrified. Natalie, this is identity theft and fraud. You need to press charges. Not yet, I said. I need to build an ironclad case first. Can you help me document everything? She could. We spent the next 3 weeks building a legal fortress. Every fraudulent charge, every forged document, every stolen dollar traced back to its source. We got bank statements, credit reports, phone records, everything. This is enough to put your mother in prison, my lawyer said. Easily 5 to 10 years? Good, I replied. But I'm not filing yet. I need perfect timing. The second step was Sarah's wedding. My new ability wasn't just about finding truth. It was about knowing exactly when and how to reveal it for maximum impact. And I knew with absolute certainty that the perfect moment to destroy my family was the moment they were happiest, the moment they thought they'd won. Sarah's wedding day. I played my part perfectly. When Sarah came to my apartment to discuss bridesmaid duties, I smiled and nodded and pretended my leg wasn't screaming in pain. When she complained about the florist and the DJ and how stressed she was, I sympathized. When she mentioned that Marcus would be at the wedding, as David's groomsman, because of course he was, I didn't flinch. That won't be weird for you, will it? Sarah asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I know you two had that thing, but it was so long ago. You're over it, right? Completely, I lied. I'm happy for you, Sarah. You deserve all of this. She beamed. I knew you'd understand. You're such a good sister. I smiled until my face hurt. Behind the scenes, I was moving pieces into position like a chess grandmaster. I hired a private investigator to document Sarah's ongoing affair with Marcus. They were still seeing each other, meeting in hotels twice a week, right up until 2 weeks before the wedding. I collected text messages, photos, hotel receipts, everything David would need to see the truth. I also did some research into David's family. They were old money conservative, the type who valued reputation above all else. Infidelity was grounds for immediate disinheritance. David's father had written his own brother out of the will for having an affair, and the family hadn't spoken to him in 15 years. If David found out Sarah had been cheating, she wouldn't just lose him, she'd lose everything he represented. The money, the status, the easy life she'd been planning. But I wasn't going to tell David. That would be too simple, too easy for Sarah to spin. She'd cry, she'd apologize, she'd somehow make herself the victim. No, I needed David to discover it himself, in a way that was undeniable, public, and utterly devastating. The third step was my mother's crimes. I made copies of everything. Every fraudulent document, every forged signature, every stolen dollar. I packaged it all up with a detailed timeline and a cover letter explaining exactly what had been done to me. Then I mailed it to the district attorney's office, to the credit bureaus, to the bank's fraud department, and to a reporter I knew who specialized in family crime stories. But I dated all the letters for 2 days after the wedding, and I gave them to my lawyer to mail on my behalf. The bomb would detonate while I was nowhere near the blast radius. The fourth step was my father. This one was trickier because workplace sabotage is harder to prove than financial fraud. But I had something better than proof. I had karma. My father's company was in the middle of a major acquisition deal, and he was heading up the technical due diligence. It was the biggest project of his career, the one that would determine whether he made partner or stayed stuck in middle management forever. Through my new ability, I knew something he didn't. The company they were acquiring had a massive security vulnerability in their code base. Not illegal exactly, but catastrophically expensive if it wasn't caught. Before the deal closed, I also knew that my father, in his arrogance, had been cutting corners on the due diligence. He'd assigned the code review to his most junior developers instead of doing it himself because he was too busy playing golf with the executives. All I had to do was make sure the vulnerability didn't get discovered until after the deal closed, and then make sure everyone knew whose responsibility it had been to catch it. I reached out anonymously to one of the junior developers on the team. a woman I'd gone to college with who'd been just as mistreated by the company as I'd been by my family. I told her exactly where to look and exactly how to miss it convincingly. I told her that after the deal went south, she should have emails ready proving she'd raised concerns and been overruled. She was happy to help. Turned out my father had taken credit for her work on multiple occasions. Revenge, I was learning, was much easier when everyone already hated the target. The weeks passed in a blur of fake smiles and hidden preparation. My leg healed faster than the doctors expected, a side effect of whatever magic had awakened in me, I suspected. By the week of the wedding, I could walk without crutches, though I still wore the cast for appearances. "You're doing so well," my mother gushed at the rehearsal dinner. "See, I told you you'd be fine in time for the wedding. You always were such a fast healer." She'd forgotten that she'd never once visited me during physical therapy, that she'd never asked how I was managing the pain, the recovery, the basic activities of daily life with a broken leg. But I hadn't forgotten. I'd forgotten nothing. The rehearsal dinner was held at an expensive restaurant, paid for by David's parents. They were lovely people, gracious, kind, genuinely excited about the wedding. David's mother, Patricia, went out of her way to include me in conversations, to ask about my recovery, to make sure I was comfortable. It made what was about to happen even more justified. These good people were being conned, their son was being betrayed, and they had no idea. Sarah was radiant in a designer dress, holding court at the head of the table, every inch the blushing bride. Marcus sat 3 seats away, his eyes following her every movement. They thought they were being subtle. They weren't. I watched them all night, the tiny glances, the secret smiles, the way Marcus found excuses to touch her hand when passing drinks. I watched David notice none of it, too in love and too trusting to see what was right in front of him. And I felt nothing but cold determination. "Natalie," Sarah called out during dessert, slightly drunk on champagne. "Speech, you have to give a speech." Everyone turned to look at me. I smiled, picked up my glass, and stood carefully. "To Sarah," I said, my voice clear and strong. "You've always known exactly what you wanted, and you've never let anything stop you from getting it. Tomorrow, you're marrying an incredible man from an amazing family. You've worked so hard for this moment, and you absolutely deserve everything that's coming to you." Everyone clinked glasses, completely missing the double meaning in every word. Sarah blew me a kiss. "Love you, sis." "Love you too," I said, sitting back down. One more day. Just one more day, and it would all be over. The wedding was objectively perfect. The Rosewood estate was stunning in early autumn, all golden light and crimson leaves. The ceremony was held in a garden pavilion decorated with thousands of white roses. Sarah wore a dress that cost more than my car, and she looked beautiful. I could admit that objectively, even hating her as much as I did. David looked at her like she was the only person in the world. It actually hurt to watch, knowing what I knew, knowing what he was about to learn. I played my role flawlessly. I smiled in the family photos. I held Sarah's bouquet during the vows. I signed the marriage license as a witness. I was the perfect bridesmaid, the perfect sister, the perfect daughter. And all the while, the golden warmth in my chest pulsed with anticipation. The reception was held in the estate's grand ballroom. 300 guests, a live band, a dinner that cost more per plate than I made in a week. David's parents had spared no expense, and my parents basked in the reflected glory, acting as if they'd contributed anything beyond criticism and demands. I waited until after the first dance, after the toasts, after dinner. I waited until everyone was relaxed and happy, champagne-buzzed and sentimental. Then I made my move. I'd hired someone, a woman from a PI firm who specialized in discreet operations, to deliver an envelope to David. Not to me, to David specifically. The envelope contained printed photos of Sarah and Marcus together, kissing in a hotel hallway, entering a room, leaving hours later with disheveled clothes. Damning, undeniable evidence. The delivery was timed for 8:30, during a break in the dancing. I watched from across the ballroom as a server approached David's table and handed him the envelope. I watched him open it, confused at first, then still. So still. The moment David's face changed from confusion to devastation, I felt it. A surge of that golden warmth so intense it almost knocked me over. This was justice. This was karma. This was every cruelty visited upon me coming home to roost. David stood up slowly, the photos clutched in his hand. He looked around the ballroom until his eyes found Sarah, who was laughing with her bridesmaids by the bar. Then he looked at Marcus, who was standing with a groomsman near the dance floor. I saw the exact moment David put it together. The color drained from his face, then rushed back in an angry red flush. He strode across the ballroom, every eye following him, sensing that something was about to happen. "David?" Sarah called out, her smile faltering. "Baby, what's wrong?" He didn't answer. He walked straight to Marcus and punched him in the face. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Marcus went down hard, blood pouring from his nose. David stood over him, shaking with rage, the photos scattered on the floor around them. "You son of a bitch," David said, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "You were my friend, my best man, and you've been fucking my wife?" The word wife landed like a bomb. Everyone turned to stare at Sarah, who'd gone white as her wedding dress. "David, I can explain," she started, but he cut her off. "Explain what? Explain these?" He gestured to the photos and someone gasped as they saw what they showed. "Explain how you've been cheating on me for months? Explain how everything you told me was a lie?" "David, please, not here." "Not here?" His voice cracked. "You did this here. You married me knowing you were in love with someone else. You stood in front of my family, your family, God, and you lied to my face." Patricia rushed over, picking up one of the photos. Her face crumpled as she saw what it showed. "Sarah," she said quietly, "is this true?" Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked desperately at my mother, who'd frozen in her seat, champagne glass halfway to her lips. "It's not what it looks like," Sarah finally said. "Those photos they're out of context. They're dated," David interrupted coldly. "Last Tuesday, 3 days before our wedding, while you were supposedly at your bachelorette party spa weekend. Want to explain that context, Sarah?" She couldn't. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, while 300 people stared at her in horror and disgust. David's father approached, his face carved from stone. "The marriage will be annulled. Tomorrow. And Sarah, I want you to know that my son was going to add you to his trust tonight as a wedding gift. That will not be happening now. I'll have my lawyers contact you about returning the honeymoon tickets, the wedding gifts, and the $10,000 check we gave you this morning." Well, he turned to his wife. "Patricia, get David. We're leaving." They left. Just like that, David and his entire family walked out of the reception, leaving Sarah standing alone in her white dress, mascara running down her face, her perfect wedding in ruins. Marcus had fled at some point during the confrontation, probably to the emergency room. And me? I quietly slipped out of the ballroom and went to the bridal suite, where I changed out of my bridesmaid dress and into regular clothes. I packed up my things, including the very expensive necklace my mother had borrowed from me for Sarah to wear. I took it right off the vanity where Sarah had left it. Then I left through a side door and went home. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. They wouldn't have noticed anyway. The fallout was spectacular. By the next morning, the story had spread through our entire social circle. Sarah's wedding imploded became the scandal of the year. People took sides, most of them against Sarah, especially once Marcus's girlfriend, I hadn't known he had one, came forward with her own story of betrayal. My mother called me 63 times in the first 24 hours. I didn't answer. Sarah called me 47 times, sent over 100 texts. I blocked her number. My father called once, left a voicemail telling me I was tearing this family apart, by not supporting Sarah in her time of crisis. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. 3 days after the wedding, the letters I'd sent arrived at their destinations. The district attorney's office opened an investigation into my mother for identity theft and fraud. The reporter published a story about financial abuse within families. The credit bureaus flagged my mother's accounts and began the process of removing the fraudulent debt from my credit report. My mother was arrested on a Tuesday morning. She called me from jail. I answered that time. "Natalie, thank God," she sobbed. "This is all a misunderstanding. I need you to tell them. You have to explain that I had permission to use your credit card, that the loans were—" "No," I said quietly. "What?" "No, Mom, I'm not going to lie for you. You stole from me. You committed fraud. You destroyed my credit and my financial future so you could fund Sarah's lifestyle. And now you're going to face the consequences. You can't do this. I'm your mother." "You haven't been my mother in a very long time," I said. "You've been Sarah's manager and my ATM. Well, the ATM is closed now. Permanently." I hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked her number too. The following week, my father's acquisition deal closed. 2 weeks later, the security vulnerability I'd known about surfaced. The company they'd acquired got hit with a massive ransomware attack that exploited the exact weakness my father was supposed to have caught during due diligence. The resulting losses totaled $40 million. My father was fired within a day. The junior developer I'd helped, Melissa, came forward with emails proving she'd flagged concerns and been overruled. She was promoted to my father's position. He called me only once. "You did this," he said flatly. "I don't know how, but you did this. You sabotaged my career." "No, Dad," I said. "You sabotaged your own career by being lazy and arrogant. I just made sure the truth came out." "You're dead to me," he spat. "You've been dead to me since you told my would-be employer I was a drug addict," I replied calmly. "We're even now." He didn't call back. Sarah tried a different approach. She showed up at my apartment 2 months after the wedding, thin and pale, her beauty dimmed by stress and regret. I almost didn't let her in, but I was curious, and that golden warmth in my chest was humming with anticipation, like it knew something good was coming. "Natalie," she said, collapsing onto my couch, "everything is falling apart. David won't talk to me. Marcus dumped me. Mom's in jail. Dad lost his job. Our family is destroyed." "Okay," I said neutrally. She looked up at me confused. "Okay, that's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Sarah?" "I want you to help. You always help. You always fix things. That's what you do." She stood up, pacing. "You have to talk to David for me. Explain that I made a mistake, that I love him, that—" "No," she stopped. "What?" "No, I'm not going to help you. You made your choices and now you get to live with them. But you're my sister. And you were sleeping with my fiancé." The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't regret them. "In my bed, Sarah. In my apartment. While I was working overtime to pay for a wedding to a man who was cheating on me with you. And then you comforted me while I cried about it. Do you have any idea how sick that is?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was young and stupid, and—" "You're 24, not 12. You knew exactly what you were doing." I crossed my arms. "Just like you knew what you were doing when you took credit for my art project in high school. And when you told Mom I didn't need a graduation party because I wouldn't want one anyway. And when you borrowed my car and totaled it, then convinced Dad it was my fault. And when you—" Okay, I get it. I've been a terrible sister, but we can fix this, right? We can go back to how things were? How things were." I laughed, a bitter sound. "Sarah, things were terrible. I was miserable. You all treated me like a servant, like someone whose only value was in what I could do for you. Why would I want to go back to that?" "Because we're family," she said desperately. "Family forgives each other. Family helps each other. That's what you always said." I said a lot of things I didn't mean because I was trying to convince myself I wasn't being abused. I replied quietly. but I'm done lying to myself, and I'm done being your scapegoat." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "What happened to you? You're different. You're cold." "I died," I said simply. "In that accident you barely acknowledged. I died on that operating table for 47 seconds, and when I came back, I saw everything clearly for the first time in my life. I saw you all for who you really are, and I decided I deserved better. Natalie, please leave, Sarah, and don't come back. I'm not part of your life anymore." She left crying. I felt nothing but relief. That was 2 years ago. In the time since, my life has transformed in ways I never imagined possible. The fraud charges against my mother stuck. She took a plea deal, 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution of everything she'd stolen from me, plus damages. She sold their house to pay me back. My father, unemployed and unemployable after the acquisition disaster, had to move into a one-bedroom apartment in the same bad neighborhood where I used to live. Sarah never recovered from the wedding scandal. David's family made sure the story spread through their social circles, effectively blacklisting her from the kind of society she'd always dreamed of joining. She works as a receptionist now, living with a roommate, driving a used car. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Marcus did eventually take her back, but that relationship is as toxic as you'd expect. As for me, the golden warmth that awakened in me during that accident never went away. If anything, it's grown stronger. I've learned to use it deliberately to guide my decisions with preternatural accuracy. I started my own software security company with the money my mother was ordered to repay me. That sense of knowing, of being able to spot vulnerabilities and predict outcomes, turned out to be an incredible business advantage. Within 6 months, I had contracts with 3 major corporations. Within a year, I'd hired a team of 20 people. Within 18 months, I was fielding acquisition offers. I turned them all down. This company is mine, built from the ashes of everything my family tried to destroy. I also met someone. His name is James, and he's an attorney who specializes in family law and financial abuse cases. We met when he reached out about using my story for a legal education seminar he was teaching. We got coffee to discuss it, and 4 hours later, we were still talking. He's nothing like the men I used to date. The ones who, I can now see, were chosen specifically because my family approved of them. James is kind, brilliant, passionate about justice, and he sees me. Really sees me, not the convenient version of me that my family preferred. We've been together for 1.5 years. He knows about my ability. I told him everything after 6 months, terrified he'd think I was crazy. Instead, he'd held my hand and said, "That explains why you're so good at reading people, and why you insisted I get my car's brakes checked that time. You saved my life, you know." Last month, he proposed. I said yes. We're planning a small wedding, just close friends, his family, who are wonderful, and a few colleagues. No one from my biological family is invited. They don't even know it's happening. My mother has tried to reach out a few times since being released from prison, emails full of self-pity and vague apologies. I delete them without reading past the first line. My father, I heard, is working as a warehouse manager now. Sarah is still with Marcus, still miserable, still wondering how her perfect life fell apart. I could feel sorry for them. I could extend an olive branch, could be the bigger person, could forgive, but I don't want to. That probably makes me a bad person by some standards. But those standards were set by people who think victims should always forgive their abusers, that blood is thicker than water, that family is family no matter what. I've learned that blood is just blood. And family isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up when you're broken, who celebrates your victories, who sees your worth even when you can't see it yourself. My family of origin did none of those things. They chose Sarah's wedding over my accident, chose convenience over compassion, chose cruelty over kindness again and again and again. And when I recovered, when I healed and thrived and built a life that was bigger and better than anything they'd ever imagined for me, I chose not to tell them. They still think I'm somewhere out there, limping along, barely surviving, waiting for them to need me again so I can come running to help. They have no idea that I'm thriving, that I'm successful, happy, in love, and free. That the broken bird they left to die in the hospital learned to fly higher than any of them ever could. And they never will. Because the best revenge isn't making them suffer, though I won't pretend I don't enjoy knowing my mother is in prison and my father is bagging groceries for a living. The best revenge is living well, is building something beautiful out of the ruins they left, is being genuinely, completely happy without them. Sometimes, late at night, that golden warmth in my chest pulses gently like a heartbeat, like a reminder. I don't know exactly what it is. Magic, divine intervention, a psychic ability awakened by trauma, and I don't really care. All I know is that it saved my life in more ways than one. It showed me the truth when I was drowning in lies. It gave me the power to protect myself when no one else would. It guided me toward real love, real family, real happiness. And it taught me the most important lesson of all. Some people don't deserve your forgiveness, your energy, or your presence in their lives. My mother calls from prison sometimes. The call's automatically rejected by my phone. Sarah has a new Instagram account after I blocked her old one. She posts sad girl quotes and pictures of her and Marcus that scream dysfunction. My father sent me a Facebook friend request last week from what appears to be a new profile. I declined it without a second thought. They chose her wedding over my accident. They chose themselves over me, again and again, my entire life. So I'm choosing me now. Every day, for the rest of my life. And I'm never, ever looking back. Epilogue, my wedding to James is next month. We're getting married in a botanical garden, small and intimate. Exactly the opposite of Sarah's failed spectacle. The guest list is 70 people. Every single one of them someone who's earned their place in my life through love, respect, and genuine care. James's parents are hosting the rehearsal dinner. They've treated me with more kindness in 2 years than my biological parents did in 27. His mother has taken to calling me her daughter, and I don't even flinch anymore. I call her Mom, and I mean it. Last week I received a letter. Not an email, an actual physical letter, forwarded to my business address by someone who must have done significant digging to find me. It was from Sarah. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity won out, and that golden warmth hummed in my chest. Not in warning, but in something that felt almost like amusement. The letter was 7 pages long, handwritten on expensive stationery that she probably couldn't actually afford. It was part apology, part plea, part desperate justification for everything she'd done. The key lines. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. I'm seeing a therapist now. She says I have narcissistic personality disorder and that I might have been jealous of you my whole life. I don't know if that's true, but I'm trying to be better. Marcus and I broke up. Again. For real this time. He was cheating on me with his coworker. I guess karma is real after all. Mom got out of prison last month. She's living with Dad now. It's bad, Nat. They're broke. They're fighting all the time. Dad drinks too much. Mom cries a lot. They talk about you sometimes. They say they miss you, that they wish they'd done things differently. I saw on LinkedIn that you have your own company now. That's amazing. I always knew you were smart. I wish I'd told you that more. I wish I'd been a better sister. I heard from someone that you're getting married. I'm happy for you. I really am. I know I have no right to ask, but could I come to the wedding? I wouldn't cause any trouble. I just want to see you happy. I want to see you win. Even if it means accepting that I lost. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it down, picked up my phone, and texted James. Sarah sent me a letter asking to come to the wedding. What do you think? His response came immediately. What does your gut say? I closed my eyes and checked in with that golden warmth, that sense of knowing that had never steered me wrong. It pulsed once, firmly. No, some wounds don't heal. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. And some people don't get to be part of your happy ending just because they're sorry they lost theirs. I texted James back, "My gut says no. She made her choices. I've made mine." "Good," he replied. "That's my girl. See you tonight. Love you." Love you too. I took Sarah's letter, walked to my kitchen, and fed it into the shredder. The sound was deeply, profoundly satisfying. Then I sat down at my computer and got back to work on the life I'd built, the one they'd tried so hard to prevent me from having. I have a company to run, a wedding to plan, and a future full of people who actually love me. I don't have time for ghosts.